So you and the legendary Barry Horne, may he rest in peace, were prosecuted for attempting to rescue Rocky the Dolphin. Can you
Yeah.
please share with us a little bit more about Rocky and why you were motivated to rescue him?
Um, well, as I said before, it's a strange one really because myself and Barry and the others who were arrested for the attempted liberation of Rocky, all came from Northampton, which
Hmm.
is the most landlocked county in the United Kingdom. So we're as far from the sea as it's possible to get in this country, and yet, we found ourselves in this enterprise, and it came about. I was approached by someone who had looked at Rocky's situation and had done some background work. And he came to me. I met him one night actually, and he kind of outlined this idea about freeing Rocky. And at first, I thought this sounds utterly mad, but I was intrigued. And he gave me some intricate, detailed marine charts of Morecambe Bay, which was where Rocky was kept in Marineland, performing his tricks. And the thing about it is that Rocky's prison, and it was a prison, was at the end of a pier that was only 50 meters from the sea at high tide. And what the marine map showed was that at high tide, there are deep gullies in Morecambe Bay, which, if we could get him out at the right time, he could use to get out the bay and into the open sea. Obviously, we did a lot of work, we did a lot of talking about it, read as much as we could. We made lots of nighttime visits to Morecambe, traveling from it was about a 4 hour trip up there. And we started getting into the marina in the dead of night or the early hours of the morning and acclimatizing ourselves to Rocky. And we even actually got in the pool with him a couple of times in the dead of night, to try and get him used to the idea. And you got to remember, we also knew at the time that he'd been incarcerated for something like over 20 years on his own. And they had tried to introduce another dolphin with him, and he killed the other dolphin
Hmm.
purely out of, I would assume, and the experts would say was the case, is that he was literally being driven mad. Um, and a more desperate plight you can't really imagine. Try and put yourself into the mind of a highly intelligent mammal like that that's spent so many years. He was caught off the Florida Panhandle when he was a young dolphin and shipped to the UK and into the entertainment industry. So we kept these nighttime trips up, and eventually we knew that it was going to be difficult because he weighed a lot. He was a heavy. He was 9 foot long. And what we did, we calculated his weight and we constructed a stretcher which we were going to use to carry him. We looked at stretchers that are used in the dolphin entertainment industry. We kind of made our own out of scaffold poles and some strong kind of fabric, which was all padded with holes cut in for his flippers and everything. But we still had to try this out. So what we did, we went to a hardware store and bought sacks of cement to the same weight that we calculated Rocky weighed, put those on the stretcher, and then practiced it. And we practiced carrying it. It was heavy, but it was doable. So then we worked and worked on it, and we decided eventually, this particular Saturday night it was, that we would attempt the liberation at high tide. We had the maritime maps. We knew that he could get out the bay. At high tide, very high tide, the water was less than 50 meters from the dolphinarium. And also we'd been going in and out at night, climbing over the wall, and then I would let the other people in. I would open the door from inside and let people into the dolphinarium in the lead up to this. On the night, I did exactly the same. We arrived there, we got the equipment out. And what we decided to do was, there was a large net inside the dolphinarium, which they used to net Rocky if they wanted to, if a vet was to examine him. And we decided we would use that because he got used to us. We would coax him in, as we had been doing before, to the side, and then we would put the net around him, hold him to the side, and then lift him physically out the water onto the stretcher. We got there after midnight. In fact, probably at 1 o'clock in the morning, I climbed into the dolphinarium, opened the door from inside, and let the others in. And so began several hours of attempts to catch him. to the side, and we just couldn't do it. We struggled on and on till probably about 3 o'clock in the morning before we realised that it's not going to work this way. We weren't going to give up, and we thought, well, we'll go away and come up with something else. But unfortunately for us, and unbeknown to us, the Dolphin area was overlooked by a hotel, and a night worker in the hotel, a night cleaner, from an upstairs window that overlooked the Dolphin area, had seen us. And what we didn't know is she'd called the police. And as we packed the kit away and said, look, we put everything back as we found it, so we returned and started to get the equipment out, people climbing out, and I went out to close the door. We suddenly saw loads of blue flashing lights coming along the seafront, and clearly it was the police. We didn't know that we'd been reported, and we didn't know, but we all scattered. Myself and Barry crawled under some cars in the hotel car park, and the police had already caught a couple of people. And then I could see that the police were coming along the car park and shining torches around the car park. As they approached the car I was under, I rolled out and ran across the car park, over the road, straight into a railway station opposite, into the car park. Unfortunately for me, I ran to the back of the car park to be confronted by a 9-foot wall. Attempted to jump up it and slid down into the arms of the police, and was then duly taken back. They opened the back of the van, and there sat Barry and the other two, and the four of us were taken off to the police station for questioning. And then obviously we were charged, released on bail, and awaited our trial, which took place at Lancaster Crown Court.
As I understand it, Rocky was eventually liberated, though, right?
He was, yeah. Amazing. Backstory to this is that we went to trial, and the trial was really interesting. They got experts in. They got an expert in Cambridge University to say that Rocky wasn't suffering, a so-called Dolphin expert. But we called in a number of our own experts who clearly said he was suffering, and our defence was that we were justified in our actions. The judge hated us. She wasn't having any of it, and despite what I think was a really good case, we were found guilty. Myself and Barry were given suspended prison sentences and heavy fines, and the other two were given also given heavy fines. But the thing that happened here, it caused quite a stir in the media. I mean, it would do, wouldn't it? 4 people getting caught in the middle of the night trying to liberate a dolphin from the Dolphin area in the north of England. But what that did, it sparked a real interest in Morecambe, and there were some students at Lancaster University who and they had an animal rights group, and they were brilliant. They just jumped in straight away and started the Free Rocky campaign, and they picketed every single performance he did that summer. There were people there. I mean, Keith Mann was there. There were lots of animal rights people, young animal rights people at the time. And so no one went into any of his shows without having to pass a picket. But also, when they were going through their performance, we'd have a megaphone on the outside and people continually talking through the performance, talking about what, the suffering that Rocky was going through, and the whole dolphin industry. And it worked. Council meetings were lobbied. Councillors were approached and got on side. Where there was a national march for Rocky, hundreds of people turned up in Morecambe and marched around Free Rocky, and the pressure just kept building and building. And then it finally happened. There was some negotiations. The company that owned Rocky agreed to let him go. Arrangements were made. A national Sunday newspaper in the UK set up a fund. British Airways offered to fly him to a pre-release site in the Turks and Caicos Islands in the Indian Ocean, and everything was set to go. There was a last-minute drama when the owners of Rocky, the night before he was due to be moved him out of one dolphin area at Morecambe and moved him to Yorkshire. A team of people rushed up there, myself included, and the vet who was working through the Born Free Foundation, who took on the job of moving Rocky, raced up to Flamingo Land in Yorkshire, and a confrontation occurred outside there. A scuffle was broke out between security and that, but eventually the vet was allowed in. Rocky was declared fit. They agreed to sign the papers. The low loader lorry turned up. Rocky was loaded, taken to Manchester Airport and into an airplane, into the hold, where he was accompanied by an expert vet and people from British Marine Rescue and others, and he took off. He eventually arrived at the Turks and Caicos Islands, where he had a pre-release pen in the sea. So the idea was that he would spend weeks, however many weeks it was, acclimatizing before the pen would be finally opened. Except Rocky wasn't having any of it. And I got a phone call from a friend of mine who travelled with the team to say, "You're not going to believe it, Mel. He's jumped out. He's free." He jumped out. He jumped over the pre-release pen, and a few days later, he was spotted swimming with a local dolphin called Jojo, who was known to tourists. And for many years after that, he was spotted in the company of Jojo, and he decided that he weren't going to wait. You know, he was going to go, and he just jumped straight out.
That is a beautiful story.
Yeah. And I think the lesson here is, as well, is, you know, you get a lot of people in the industries, you know, whether it's dolphin.
That's what I was going to bring up. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, these animals can never rehabilitate themselves. They can. They certainly can. The desire to be free, certainly in Rocky's case, was so strong. The desire to end that nightmare of 20 odd years of solitary confinement must have been so overwhelming that he wasn't going to wait, you know, and who could blame him? So, and he made it, you know, so there's a lesson for everyone, and especially the so-called experts who says it can't be done. It can be done.